being an introvert, you sometimes do things by yourself, like all the time, let's just say. I wish I talked more to people and not been afraid to be a little more vulnerable about like my business and like, how do you do that? Or like, what do you do when this happens? Or have you seen this? And even just reaching out to people who might not necessarily know, like that whole support network is super important. And it wasn't that I was, trying to be, striking this bravado, like, oh, I don't need help, not at all. But it was just like, wow, this could have been a lot easier had I talked to somebody.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to 7 and 8 figures without burning out. Before Purple Circle, I started and scaled several 7 and 8 figure career coaching businesses myself and consulted with 2 career coaching businesses that are now doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or just building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Career Coaching Secrets podcast. Today we're joined by Mary Despe, a career and interview coach who helps mid to senior professionals who feel unseen and undervalued reclaim their power and land roles that truly align. With nearly 20 years of experience as a recruiter and a background in HR systems and hiring operations, Mary brings a rare depth of insights into both sides of the job search. She's currently on the path to her PCC and works with individuals and teams to elevate visibility, influence, and self-leadership. It's my pleasure to have you on the show. Welcome to the podcast, Mary.
Hey, thanks for having me, Regin. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Could you tell me a little bit more on what inspired you to become a coach or get your coaching business started?
Well, I would say that, I come from a big family. Well, I consider it big. I had 4 siblings and, I'm 4th out of 5. And it was always a case where it was hard to know exactly what my role was in the whole dynamic. And over time, I realized that I'm an observer. So a lot of what I grew up with was just kind of seeing what everyone in my family was doing, like my siblings who were probably doing things they shouldn't have been doing and taking note of that, and also just being like behind the scenes. And I find that like that just upbringing really shaped a lot of the choices and actions that I had for myself as an adult and professionally. I am also an introvert, and I think it goes really well hand in hand with just kind of, observing everything. But I find that, I don't know, just my journey into coaching was really from one of support and assistance of others and really helping them shine or really helping them get to the end goal. Although I had done it in different capacities, like I wasn't a coach for a long time, like I had worked in human resources, talent, from a few different angles, mainly in recruitment, but also in systems, and just knowing that, you're not necessarily the charismatic leader, but you have to get stuff done, and you play a very key role. And knowing that you have to work with other people to extract information and get them, to help you and help in turn the bigger project, those kind of attributes were emphasized, and I enjoyed it. I found that I was really good at it, and it was really more about the bigger picture and helping people reach where they needed to go. And that fueled a lot of why I went into coaching. It was very gratifying to help people reach an end goal that they were intending to reach. And it's like you were a part of it. And because HR is just very human based, and it's really about personalities, but also relationships, that felt so good to me, and I wanted more of that. So that's really how I, decided to jump into coaching. I mean, I had been a recruiter and in the HR world for a while and had elements of that, but it wasn't until about 3 or 4 years ago where I'm like, I think I can do this full time. And I decided to jump into it that way.
So 3 or 4 years ago, and But when it comes to the business itself, it has been almost like 12 years, right?
Yeah, I have worked with my own business primarily from that HR consultancy and recruiting perspective. Like that was the primary role. So whenever people had challenges or companies had challenges on certain things that were like recruitment or system setup or just ongoing maintenance of that, I would assist them with that. But along in that journey, especially on the recruitment side, there are a lot of people who are looking for new roles and they're either not landing those roles. And then you have a discussion like, why are you not landing these roles? And as a recruiter, you're not always in the capacity to serve a person like a job seeker or a candidate for that pure intention. Like you might be working for a company and that company has an actual position open. So you're really representing the company and not so much working directly with the job seeker to help them really figure out like what is it about the background that needs to be improved, or something about your story that needs to come out more. So I found that I was over time really attracted to that part, making a difference and impact with people's lives that way while helping businesses. So yes, so it's been a journey that like my business had started out more in this HR and recruiting capacity. And then over the last, I would say like 3.5 years, it's been fully focused on coaching.
Cool. So 3.5
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you definitely work with mid to senior level professionals. Could you share more about the target audience? Is there a specific demographic or industry that goes into?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I mean, I've always said that like anyone who finds this statement of, if they feel undervalued or unseen in the workplace or professionally, and they really want more for themselves, if that statement connects with you as a person and you want to do something about it, that's who my target audience is. What has evolved over time is that most of the successful relationships that I have tend to be with experienced, professionals. And when I say experienced, they're not entry level roles. They're probably working at least 7 or 8 years. They are ready to move into management or even higher than that. Something, they've mastered what they've been doing, so they think, and they're looking to get into something, but they haven't yet been able to break through. So that's really who I work with. They do tend to work in technology for sure, as well as like professional services and healthcare. So, science-based functions, I would say a lot of them, like the story connects. And I will say in general, people who are not super shy, but they do connect with this idea of being an introvert or not seen. Like they might be a great worker, but they're not charismatic, or they're not necessarily the first one everyone thinks of.
Mhm.
So that's really who I work with.
I actually feel like I could be in that target. I do feel like an introvert, or like I don't necessarily always do well when it comes to like I do well on one-on-one conversations. I tend to not get a lot of energy when it comes to big groups of people. So this kind
I
of
hear you.
how I feel. But when it comes to your target audience and the people that you work with, how do you find them? How do you connect with your potential clients? Like when it comes to lead generation mostly.
Well, and I will be very open about it. This is always an area that I'm looking to improve, gain more insights, see better improvement. But I will say that what has worked for me over the last few years is definitely referrals based. So people that I've worked with professionally that know me to some capacity, and they refer me people or they refer themselves to work in this coaching capacity. That has been probably the number one way for the types of clients that I want to have. However, the other parts of my equation for lead generation, I do reach out to new groups of people, I tend to go more organizational than like one-on-one direct campaigns like, hey, are you looking for a career coach kind of thing. I really try to target organizations that I know have some, some interest in promoting and retaining excellent workers, or there's potential in people. So a lot of times I'll offer to do speaking for an organization or a free webinar or a free workshop for that sort of thing, and always make it available. But generally from those two main sources, those are where the best clients that I've worked with have come from. Those are the main ones.
How does it work when it comes to the organization? So you reach out to them and then you show them, like, how do you get them to speak for them or do a workshop for them? How does that work?
A lot of these organizations, they have it on their mind that their people, or the ones that are left working, they want to retain them, or they want to at least keep many of them happy. So knowing and having and targeting targets or topics for this concern with key people, the right kinds of people at organizations, that's really very helpful. Where I come from is more of like an additional value that's really low cost or no cost in some cases, that is really just a benefit to them to help support their workforce. And then if anything else beyond that happens, that's great. But it's really me going to establish contacts that I know, like people that I've worked with who maybe can introduce me to other organizations so that they can vouch for the connection. Or, clients that I've worked with in the past, if they're at different organizations now, I'll ask whether, there are employee resource groups or other kinds of groups internally where these topics are being talked about, but there isn't necessarily a formal structure to address a specific topic. So that's what I do. I mean, I basically reach out to them like it's a steady kind of activity, certain topics that are either hot or like one of the things lately, I mean, I feel like over the last couple of years with layoffs, I mean, yes, support the people who are being laid off. Absolutely. And offer support around that. And however, there are people who are left at the company that are dealing with the layoffs too, because now they're smaller teams with like a workload that has tripled in some cases. They're stressed out. They don't know if another layoff is coming, and then also just the trust is not necessarily there with the organization, and depending on how the message was communicated. So not only are the teams dealing with it, but also the managers and leadership. I mean, they have a lot to carry. So, these are things that can stress people out. And there is really no official outlet for people to go to where they can feel safe. I know a lot of times companies say, oh, well, you can go to HR or use our resources. But a lot of times I know that people are wary of going to HR because it's like, are you going to report me? Ooh, is it going to go in my report? And coaching an external kind of face or entity allows for that free and safe space.
Mm-hmm.
So that's hopefully I answered your question.
That did answer the question, definitely. And it's an interesting approach. I always like when there's like approaches that I haven't noticed on the podcast before. And I always like to ask and learn more on how that works. And this also, I think, like this method of you generating awareness around yourself and maybe generating leads, like the second method, also feeds the first one because you also get referrals this way in a way.
Yes.
Even for people who haven't worked with you, they might still refer you this way. And I really like that because you build trust even to the people you haven't worked with by giving these workshops. And do you do it in person or is it virtual?
I'll do both depending where they are. I mean, I live in Hawaii, so a lot of these things are, if they're not in Hawaii, they're virtual.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'll go to a location if that, presents itself as an opportunity. But yeah, like I feel like, what's the saying? There is a saying around this where, like if you don't know someone that well, like people will trust you when they see you perform. If they
Mhm.
see your work, like that speaks for like a lot. It builds credibility, it builds trust. It's like, yes, they know what they're doing and there's a level of comfort. So I feel like, that's part of what I think I do best at, when people
Mhm.
can see it and they get to know me to some degree. However, I know we were talking before the podcast that like this is where I'm always open for discussions about, okay, if you want to have a growing business, how do you scale that? Or can it be scaled? And even like and if it cannot be scaled, like what other things should a person be thinking about to grow their business if, beyond the methods that have worked. So like those are things that I'm constantly interested in.
Yeah, building trust is one of them. Like it plays such a big role, even in growing and scaling your business. And when people see what you are able to do in action, definitely that increases trust. It goes without saying. I wanted to ask you and wanted to move a little bit away from the marketing and move into your future. Are there any goals that you're working towards for the next 1 to 3 years with your coaching business?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a few goals I have. So, my business is comprised of one-on-one coaching for sure, and I enjoy that so much. But along the way, I've learned and discovered that I do enjoy group coaching to some degree. And also you find when in speaking with a lot of people how that message can resonate with not just your intended target. There are other audiences that like really connect and vibe with what you have to say, but maybe they're not at the same level. So an example of that is I've gotten to know many like entry level or early in their career kinds of professionals or soon to be professionals, I should say, students. And I really feel like that's also an audience I want to serve. I do, although it's very different from like the target that I've been working with. And I want to figure out a way where I can better serve both without it feeling too disconnected. One of the things that I've started is what's called the Move Up Mindset Career Community. And it's a bit of group coaching around a lot of the career fundamentals, but at the same time, there's like brief online courses around like resumes and LinkedIn profiles and stuff. But if there's a way that I could better serve those communities with the existing things that I'm offering, that would be something. I've seen some success with it, but I do want it to grow to something much more. I mean, certainly I have revenue targets that are always goals. I mean, I'll be frank, I'm not at 500,000, in revenue. That is a goal. That is like something that I'm hoping to get to within the next 3 years. And then, of course, beyond, so when it's like scaling to million and higher, I'm all about it. I'd love to get there as long as I'm not burning myself out and I have the right support around. But yeah, those are some of the goals.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And
Yeah.
I feel like strong goals like that, and not just working on the numbers, but also working on beyond that where the focus is. And thank you for sharing all of that. The next question is more of like focused on investments. Has there been any coaching programs, masterminds, communities? I don't know, maybe anything else that you feel like you've invested on that has really been valuable to you in growing your coaching business that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple that stand out. So, one of the things, and this is something that I started a long time ago, I'm not a member of this organization, but it's called Business Networking International or BNI, which is like more of a networking, like in person, but they also do like virtual groups where you attend like a certain group and there's different people in different occupations and it's the power of this diverse group where you can get leads for whatever your business is and such. I bring this up because that really helped me understand the power of networks, but also aligning with people that are in similar industries to you, and they might have a real interest in target audience that you have, but for different reasons. And really collaborating with those kinds of allies and partners and finding more people like that to help, be in touch with more prospects and just people who have the same reason. And it's more collaborative than it being a competition. So that organization definitely stresses that philosophy that I'm grateful for, because I think it informs a lot of what I do now. The other thing that I would say in the last 2 years that I've been a part of is, I think it's more like an organizational, like, how do you schedule and organize your time kind of thing, and how do you look at your goals? But there is a method. It's a book. I have the book. I haven't really gotten into the method, but because they teach classes on it and stuff like that. But it's the 12-week year by Brian Moran and Michael Lennington. Basically, it takes the whole like annual goal setting process and makes it more so that you're doing like a set of goals every 12 weeks. Because when you do goals, a lot of times it's like this big goal in the sky that maybe you'll do some progress with part of the year and then you stop or something happens and it's hard to keep your mind set on it. But this is just another way to really think about it more tangibly and take actions towards better goal setting in a shorter amount of time. And that has worked better for me because I was brought up in this whole like annual goal setting, do a retreat like in October and November for the next year and plan out the whole year. And like that just never really worked well for me as an individual, as your own business. So like what did though was, okay, that's fine for bigger goals, but like what does it look like for Q1, Q2, this, like what does that really look like? And that made it more real to me. Yeah. So those two I would credit for any investment in like ongoing learning or programs.
Thank you for sharing that. I'll take a look at the 12-week year too.
Yeah.
Actually, in my consulting offer, we followed the same method, kind of like in setting from all of the departments working in the company. We had quarterly goals that would build up into the whole annual goal, and those were also in a way adjustable depending on because like when you set a goal and it's a goal for the whole year, how you felt like in January 1 or like how the conditions were in January 1 are maybe very different from how they are in October 12th or something like that.
Sure.
So yeah,
exactly.
taking that into account also helps, and bringing down into quarters. I really like that. Throughout your experience owning your own coaching business, has there been any moments or has there been any like a thing that you wish you had known first before you started scaling your coaching business, like an unexpected lesson learned?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And if you don't mind, I'll share two. But one for sure is always do your lead generation and sales. Like always have like a standing calendar of X number of slots for sales every week. Like don't blow it off. Like even though you don't want to do it or don't want to do the calls, like, discipline and consistency, like it really pays off. And that's something that I learned early on and continue to really, just want better consistency with that and improve. I would also say the second thing that I wish I knew more, being an introvert, you sometimes do things by yourself, like all the time, let's just say. I wish I talked more to people and not been afraid to be a little more vulnerable about like my business and like, how do you do that? Or like, what do you do when this happens? Or have you seen this? And even just reaching out to people who might not necessarily know, like that whole support network is super important. And it wasn't that I was, trying to be, striking this bravado, like, oh, I don't need help, not at all. But it was just like, wow, this could have been a lot easier had I talked to somebody.
So yeah, obviously most people that own their own business know that they need help, but it's like, are you actively looking for it? Are you taking steps to getting that help? And not just
Yeah.
thinking that, oh, I need help, but I'm still gonna do it myself. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
I mean, I don't know about others, but I mean, I'll admit I'm a little bit of a control, not a control freak, but like I like to have control. So giving up any bit of that is like, like I don't know. I don't know. Like I like it this way. And like I've really learned over the years, like, yes, there will always be that, but like I really need to be okay with like different ways to approach a problem and like really be open to that. So that also is something. And then I think it ties really well with talking to other people that your one point of view, that's fine. That's good in some cases, but can we be better with other kind of diverse ideas? Absolutely.
mhm.
Yeah.
And what would you say is the biggest challenge right now in you scaling your coaching business to the number that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah.
What is like that one thing that you, if you were to solve that, it would actually help speed up the process?
So I feel like it's tied to lead generation and the consistency of things. However, in that same conversation, it's not so much that like people don't want to or they're not curious about me or they think, oh yeah, I'd like to work with her. That's fine. But at the same time, it's the qualifying the right kind of prospects for the right kind of coaching, like getting that in mass quantity or like a higher volume of quantity instead of just like free for all, like all sorts of leads. Here you go. So their quality, yeah, prospects and just the likelihood is that we're probably going to work together instead of just this throw it up on a wall and see what stays.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so definitely lead generation. And is there like a challenge recently that you feel like you've overcome already?
I can't really point to a specific one,
Hmm.
but I will say that for a long time, I had worked with only just a couple of, like now I have more people on my team to support in other capacities other than just being like admin.
Mhm.
And that's a huge thing for me
That is a really
because
big,
like again, it kind of ties, yeah. I mean, like to sit there and just be like, okay, one, the control issue is what I'm sharing, but even just like trusting, yeah, just being able to trust and identify, okay, so other areas that I can really need help with because it'll free up so much of my mental time and energy to focus on what I do really well. That was a huge move.
Mhm.
Huge. Yeah.
Yeah, I really agree with that. Like, it's like not possible, or at least I don't think it is possible to scale without being able to yeah, have a team and system in place that could do that for you. Unless, like, if you want to do everything on your own, then you're bottlenecked by yourself and your time and your capacity. Can
You
be.
know what I just realized in hearing you speak about this and just mentioning it, being able to try support in other areas and having that, I've also given myself kind of the permission to be like, okay, you're letting go to try this out, and that's okay. But also, like, just because you're doing it, it doesn't have to stay the same. Like, you can evaluate performance, like in 6 months, and like if it's what's working, what's not working. This is something that it's not etched in stone, but like the fact that before, I think I always was feeling like this control is being like given up, and like it would forever be that way, and like I'd make one decision and it would stay forever. I mean, that's unrealistic. And then I really view things more like, okay, well, let's try it and see what the results are, because like, and I'll give it time to see like if it's working well, if it's yielding something that's of value and like we can build upon. And that's actually freed myself from like not wanting to take too many chances and really just being more specific about when I do it.
Thank you. Thanks so much for sharing that. Is there any final advice you'd like to give to other career coaches who are looking to scale their impact?
I would just say that there's a voice for everyone in career coaching for sure. And I think that when you really dial into what that message is and what your strengths are to help service and impact other people's lives, that's half of the battle. But the other half is really being open to just identifying and experimenting with the systems and support that you need to scale and to continue to be successful. So it's not just like having that perfect message, it's also the very practical side as well too. And it's okay to make mistakes because we all do that. So you're not alone.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mary. And for anyone who wants to find you or connect with you, they can find you on your LinkedIn account at Mary Despe. And I think they could also find you on your website, marydespe.com.
That's right.
Is
Exactly that.
there any other way?
Those are the best ways. So I would say I would leave it mainly to those two, but those are the best ways.
Thank you so much for coming to the podcast. I think it was a lovely episode, and looking forward to maybe in the future. I tend to think like, could I interview a guest again, maybe in a year and a half or 2 years, and see where they are at that point. So for this one, thank you so much for coming. It was very nice to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Regin. Really appreciate it.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This conversation was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to 7 and 8 figures without burning out. To learn more about Purple Circle, our community, and how we can help you grow your business, visit joinpurplecircle.com.